Hello and welcome to my talk here at SwampUP. If you want to know how to start with security in your DevOps environment, how this fits to the SRE approach, and if you can merge both of them, well, then you are exactly right here in my talk. We will discover a little bit how you can start with security, how to integrate security in your team, how you can merge different approaches, what are the quick wins, and what is a basic tool you should use as a developer if you really want to have an efficient shift left. By the way, my name is Sven and I'm developer advocate at JFrog and mostly known as the man in the woods. If you can see, I'm in the forest right now and I just love it because it's a perfect time to think about complex IT challenges. So together with me, you are now on two journeys. One is to the DevSecOps world, the other one is here to the deep German forest. And well, let's see what we can do and enjoy. What is the difference to other topics with security if you want to integrate it into the DevOps world? Well, let's see, what's the DevOps world? The DevOps world normally is something that is focusing on the development, on this process, how to build software. And if you're reading Wikipedia, you will see it's most likely describing from coding, building, testing, packaging, and all this stuff until it's running in production. And the common thing here is that all of these mentioned steps are dedicated production steps. But now we are talking about security. Is security a production step? No. Security is no production step. Security is something that you must integrate in different steps, and mainly you have to integrate it in every step because security is something like quality. So let's see how we can include this one, or better, what we learned from the past and what we can do now to work with this topic security. So in the past we had these dev and ops teams, and they had both their production steps, and they had in common that the dev part was creating the binaries and the ops part was grabbing these binaries over a repository like Artifactory, for example, and then pushing to production later on. The shift from ops and dev together to DevOps was focusing on technical requirements, on different production steps and all this stuff. So this was running well and is now more or less established. But now we come with security. If security is everywhere, means that every tiny step has something to do with security, because security is not this dedicated step. Okay, the final question is how to integrate security in the DevOps world to be in DevSecOps environment. It's just, you have to think about security in every production step. I will show you different ways and how we can go with shift left as much as possible. But in general, shift left is something, or security is something that is more like a culture. Everybody must be aware. No, it's not just a product. A product will help you because as a human you are not fast enough, but it's not just buying a product, and it will not slow you down. So if you're doing it right, you have the possibility to have the security implemented in a way that's just not slowing you down. Even if you're doing it right, it will improve your quality as well, because quality and security, they are just good friends. But we'll come to this topic a little bit later. So how to integrate security? Well, everybody is part of it. It's a team responsibility. It's something like a culture. Read a little bit more about this one and you will find out that security is like quality. It's just everywhere in your pipeline. Okay, this is DevOps or DevSecOps, but people are talking about site reliability engineering. Does this fit? Can you combine this one? What's the difference? Well, the main thing is that it's site reliability engineering is coming from the Google universe, or they have this approach of we have dedicated engineers that have to work on automate all this stuff. And the definition from Google is that an SRE is mostly focusing with maximum 50% of his working time on operations, and the rest is development. So what does it mean? In the end, it's more or less the same. It's DevOps just in one person. So it's a very experienced developer that is focusing now on operations, or it's a very experienced operations guy that is now focusing on development. So whatever you take, so this SRE, Site Reliability Engineer, is more or less exactly the middle between Dev and Ops. So fit this both together? Definitely, because DevOps is just a process. It's a way how to organize all this stuff. SRE, this is a role. So does an SRE fit in a DevOps or DevSecOps world? For sure, it fits perfectly, because these are mostly the people that are exactly in the middle. And the huge potential here is that this SRE, this service reliability engineer, can glue both parts together. So the security in the operations and the security in the dev part. And take this as a chance. And well, the short answer, fit this together? Definitely. Okay, we saw that DevOps and SRE, that they are merging or fitting perfectly together. But what I'm explaining in the next steps is not bound to DevOps or SRE or whatever. So even if you have a very classical project management style, if you have a dedicated teams, you can use everything what I'm explaining right now, because this is a little bit more generic. So security is not bound to a dedicated project management style. Security is something that you can implement everywhere, but the full potential, what I'm explaining, you will get in a DevOps or DevSecOps environment. But now let's talk about an example, and the example is SolarWinds hack. So surprise, surprise, what was the big incident during the last 1 or 2 years? It's SolarWinds. So I don't want to go into all the different details of the SolarWinds hack, but I want to mention a few things that are very inspiring for what we are doing next, or it's the best thing what we should use as lesson learned. So first of all, this hacker group broke into SolarWinds. So who's SolarWinds? SolarWinds is a company that's creating a software platform that is used to manage network infrastructure. And well, surprise, surprise, if you're managing network infrastructure, first of all, this is the most critical part inside the communication structure of a company. And the second thing is that, well, to manage infrastructure, you need high rights like an administrator. And so this was a perfect target, because SolarWinds has approximately 300,000 customers that are using this software. And what this hacker group has done is just they broke into this SolarWinds environment and used SolarWinds as multiplicator to all of their customers. But what happened? How did the SolarWinds hack worked? So what happened is that this hacker group broke into this IT system from SolarWinds. SolarWinds is producing software, and the main target was not to destroy things or to make it unavailable or whatever. They just compromised the CI environment. Wow, the CI environment, why? So what they have done is they changed the builds in a way that with every build they're producing right now, they will add some compromise binaries from this hacker group, and then their official update or their official release contains already compromised code. And just having in mind that this will be spread up to potentially 300,000 customers, it's amazing. It's a huge amount of potential targets. So instead of targeting the final target or just attacking the final target, what you're just doing is you're going to multipliers, and this will have now two views. So one, if you are the next SolarWinds, or if you are a consumer of SolarWinds. So we have now two dimensions we want to have a look at, because we have to find against both sides. So if this is a new quality of attacks that they're going against the supply chain instead of the final target, well, then we have to be prepared. And say the truth. Did you ever scan your Jenkins CI against known vulnerabilities? Fight against all these attacks, what does it mean? What can you do? So talking about a DevOps environment, you have two main parts. You have the ops and you have the dev part. So where you should focus. First of all, if you're focusing on the runtime environments and scanning runtime environments, I'm not sure if you really want to have it, but if you want to test running environments, you're talking about DAST, this Dynamic Application Security Testing Frameworks. And what they're doing is they're looking at your environment like a black box. They have no knowledge about dependencies. They have no knowledge about the technology you're using. But what I want to highlight here is that these Dynamic Application Security Testing tools, they are attacking your system, try to break in, and they need the knowledge how to do all this stuff. And this is based on the most common vulnerabilities. And if you want to have some special attacks, then you need to customize these tools. You need the special knowledge. Sometimes you have cloud environment that that are not able to be customized. So what else can you do? Because we want to focus on the low-hanging fruits, the quick wins, the biggest impact you can have inside your environment, and this is definitely inside the static part. Okay, we spoke about the dynamic application security testing, and what the opposite? Well, the static part. SAST, static application security testing, and I'm personally focusing on this one because it has so many benefits, because we are not only focusing against this most common vulnerabilities from outside, because this is just a small amount. Now we are focusing on everything, so on bad code, we are focusing on known vulnerabilities, on compliance issues, and so on and so on. Why? Because we have all semantic informations, so we have everything about all components if you're focusing on the static analysis part, and we can do it even earlier than running in production. So if you're just scanning during the time it's running in production, it's too late. So I want to fight against all vulnerabilities as early as possible, and this means I have to do it in the dev part, not in the ops part. Ops isn't good at on, but the main focus should be on the dev part, because this is earlier, this is not running in production, and you have way more information you can use to harden your system. And this is why you should start on focusing on the static analytic part. Okay, if we are looking at a full tech stack, then we see that dependencies are 99% of our whole tech stack. Why? So during the time we're coding, we are writing some code, but most likely we're adding more lines of code, direct or indirectly, via dependencies or transitive dependencies. If we are then pushing this one to an operating system, so that it must run, for example, on Linux, we are configuring a little bit the operating system, but the rest of the operating system is a binary, it's a dependency we are grabbing. Same with Docker, it's just starts with a from statement, so we are adding dependencies, and the same with Kubernetes, and so on and so on. So looking at the whole tech stack means, if we are talking about what we are doing by ourselves, make or what we are adding somewhere, then the dependency, this is the biggest part of all tech layers. So if we want to efficiently fight against non-vulnerabilities, we must first focus on dependency, because this is by far the biggest part in your tech stack. Let's start with compliance issues. So what was the behavior of compliance issues, why we should scan for them, why this is part of the security? Well, security is not only a vulnerability, security is compliance, so securing the business as well. And it means if you're adding dependencies, and there's the biggest part, it makes sense to check all dependencies, direct or indirect one, to make sure that we don't have the wrong license at the right place, and this is just poison for the business. So what do we need to start fighting against compliance issues? First of all, we need someone who's authorized to decide what is the right license for what part of your production line, because then you need some legal advice, or whoever is able to decide it, to make sure that you have an initial list of allowed white labeled license and black labeled license, so not allowed license. So if you have this one, then the good thing is a machine can just start scanning. So with this yes or no for license, or even if there is explicit no license for transitive or direct dependency. Why you should scan it always with every run? Well, mostly if you're scanning first in project, if this is running under the right license, you don't have an issue anymore with this, because this mostly is not changing. But you have two things that could change. First of all, the project itself can change. For example, just look at this Java EE, Jakarta EE, now Eclipse EE stuff. So there is always a change of the dependencies. And it could be that the project maintainer from the dependency you're using is not well so clearly with his maintenance of his dependencies. So maybe he is changing from Google Guava to Commons Collections or whatever, and then you have different license, maybe or maybe not, but it's always good if you have constantly checked if there's anything regarding compliance issues. But what's happening if you have a compliance issue? So what is the work you have to do? So compliance issues they're good and bad in the same way, because the good thing is you can combine them. The bad thing is if you have a compliance issue, then you have to remove this single dot in your whole tech stack, so this single dependency, and then you have to make sure that you're changing it or replacing it by a semantic equal implementation. And this is not trivial. So find something that is just running under a different license but doing exactly the same what you're expecting. So this can make some trouble, but mostly the change of dependencies or transitive dependencies after you checked the license once is not so often. So if you have something, it could be really hard work, but mostly if you're clean, then there is no big issue over the mid or long term. Be aware of attack vectors, different attack vectors. So, talking about vulnerabilities, you have this common vulnerability scoring system, CVSS, and then you have this ranking between these different vulnerabilities, between very risky, not so risky, and so on. If you want to know more about CVSS, I have a dedicated YouTube video that's explaining the CVSS in detail. But the main thing I want to highlight here is that you need some tool that's aware of what is the CVSS value of a known vulnerability. And the next thing is, even if there is a low CVSS value, have a look at the full impact graph. So you need all dependencies over the whole tech stack, because you can combine different vulnerabilities to different attack vectors. Different attack vectors mean that the full amount of possible weak points in your application is not just every single point of a vulnerability. It is, in addition to this, the whole composition of all different attack vectors. And this means that even a low risky vulnerability can be combined with something else and then be very risky for your environment. What is a good safety build against known vulnerabilities and compliance issues? Well, one thing that is really, really good is a good test coverage. Why? Because talking about known vulnerabilities, you have to switch to different versions of the same dependency. So if you have a very strong test coverage, then you can just change versions in a way that you don't have vulnerabilities anymore. And at the same time, with this good test coverage, you can just check if this new composition of the same dependencies in different versions is doing exactly the same what you need. If you have compliance issues, TDD is even more powerful, because if you have to replace with a semantic equal implementation, you're very happy about a good test coverage, because then you can switch between different implementations and check with your test coverage if everything is running well. So TDD is one of the best safety builds against known vulnerabilities, and you need a very strong test coverage. And one of the strongest test coverage I personally know is mutation tests coverage, because it's way stronger than line coverage or branch coverage. Check out my YouTube channel. I have there a video that's explaining the mutation testing itself. But whatever test coverage you take, a strong test coverage is your safety build against known vulnerabilities and compliance issues. If test coverage is one of the best things against known vulnerabilities and compliance issues, so then you need something that's managing all these dependencies, because the composition of new dependencies, or the replacement of dependencies over all tech layers, must be part of this fight against known vulnerabilities and these compliance issues. So you need a single point, a logical single point, where all repository managers are managed, so that you have all these dependencies in one place. And then with one tool you can check not only one tech layer or one technology or one whatever, you can just scan the whole tech stack, everything. And with everything, I really mean everything. So for example, your Maven dependencies if you're coding in Java, your Debian repositories, your Docker repos, your Helm charts, but even, for example, your tooling. Think about the SolarWinds hack. So the attack was against the supply chain, means that even if you have a Docker image with your Jenkins inside, just scan it so that you know and be aware of all this vulnerability that are in. So you need one single point. We have the single point with Artifactory because we know all these different repository types and we know all this metadata. So we're understanding not only the dependencies, we're understanding the transitive dependencies until the last element as well. And then with Xray is a scanner. We are using all these binaries and this knowledge that's inside Artifactory, including build information and all this other stuff, to give you the view, the full impact graph about all known vulnerabilities and all license you're using in your whole tech stack. And this is, focusing on 80, 90, 99% of your whole tech stack. So if dependencies are by far the biggest part in your whole tech stack, and you want to start with security, focusing on dependency, focusing on an efficient dependency management, focusing on scanning these dependencies, again, vulnerabilities and compliance issues. What are you doing if you're infected with SolarWinds hack? So the short answer is just identify all components that are infected, remove them, and install from scratch with clean one. Is this so easy? Well, if you have infected components and you don't know what other components are using this one, then it's more or less a very, very long work and a lot of effort if you're doing it manually. So at Artifactory, we have the support with an Artifactory query language. It's a SQL style query language where you can select different artifacts, and then you see they are used in some other parts, or they're used by some other components, because with Xray we have the full impact graph. If you have the full impact graph, we can identify who's consuming what, and with this it's easy to make sure that we are removing the infected binaries and then making sure that all dependencies are replaced by clean ones. So this is one point. If you have a single point where all dependencies are going through, you have the full impact graph. If you have the full impact graph and you have a query style language where you can select partially trees, then you can remove everything and start installation from scratch. So this is why DevOps customers are quite happy about this query language, because with this we can just easily remove the infected binaries. Okay, if we know how to fight against known vulnerabilities, there is one term that's quite often mentioned and that's very, very important. This is shift left. What does it mean? For example, if we are shifting left the first time, means that we are not fighting against vulnerabilities inside the production, we are fighting against vulnerabilities inside our CI pipeline. With this, we can scan all binaries with every build. We can make sure that there is nothing that is just against us in terms of known vulnerabilities or compliance issues. But we can go even far or more to shift left, and this means even if you are just scanning inside the CI environment. So I'm not saying that we don't need it, I'm just saying we need something additional, because if you're working the whole day doing the first commit, or after a few hours and then pushing to a CI environment, getting feedback there are vulnerabilities inside, we burned already some money. So we have to minimize this time as well, and this means we're shifting even more left. Even more left means we're shifting straight away inside your IDE. So if you're writing your first line of code, you know all the stuff you need. So for example, is this license is correct? Do you have anything inside your transitive dependencies or indirect dependencies that you should be aware of? Do you know something about known vulnerabilities? So, and this is done with the IDE plugin. So we are shifting left straight away inside the IDE. And then if you're adding the first line of dependency or the first line of code, you know already everything. What is the full impact graph inside the stuff you're working on right now. So having it in CI environment means you have the possibility to have it over the whole tech stack. So from your application down to the Helm charts. If you have it straight away in your IDE, you know everything with the first line of code you're adding. You're not burning time and you're not wasting your efforts. If you want to try it out, we have this IDE plugin, and we have it for IntelliJ, VS Code, Eclipse, and it's open source. It's available on GitHub. So if you have any needs, so you can just make some issues, or you can make some feature requests, or if you want to push code through, just make a merge request. And with this IDE plugin, you can connect to a Xray instance. This is even possible with a free tier. So you just need the coordinates from your Xray instance, your username, password, and then you can connect to your Xray. And all the Xray information is then available inside your IDE. And how this looks like for a developer inside an IDE, I will show you in a very short screencast right now. Now we have a short view to the Xray IDE plugin. I just added in my permanent dependency, so this is the Vardian version. It's what you will have in the IDE plugin here, some kind of window. I'm using IntelliJ, so it could look a little bit different on Eclipse or whatever. Then you will see the dependency we added here already. Here there's 4120, 4120, and then you have the whole dependency tree, and you see there is a security issue with Jackson data binding. What you get is ranking, if it is a high, medium, or low security risk. You will see the license information, what type, version, and so on. The good thing is you can see here all detailed information. For example, if there is already a fixed version available, and what tiny summary of the issue itself. One cool thing is if you are somewhere, then you can just go here and say show in project descriptor. Then you're jumping here back to this one. And the good thing is if you decide to exclude, you can just go here and say exclude dependency. What you will get is dependency exclusion. That's it. The only thing I want to show you is how to install it. So in IntelliJ it's quite easy. You're going to the plugin, you're searching for JFrog plugin, updating it or just installing it. In IntelliJ you have to do a restart. In Eclipse could be different. And then the only thing you have to do is you're going to the settings of this Xray plugin, adding your coordinates, and then you can just connect your IntelliJ to the Xray installation. That's it. Have fun. Okay, it's time for the conclusion. What we learned today. So we saw that security is not only one step in your production pipeline. Security is something like a culture. Security is like quality. It's everywhere in every single step of your production pipeline. We saw that whatever you're choosing, DevOps or the approach of SRE or classical project management, whatever, security can be implemented in all of this project management description or processes. What does it mean is that everybody in your team must be aware of what he can do to increase the security inside this dedicated step he's working in. And we need the general overview, we need the full impact graph, so we need a view that is focusing on the whole tech stack of all technologies and all processes. So security is nothing like I'm just buying a product. Security is something that is a responsibility inside the team, and the team needs to be aware or needs the power to decide what must be done to achieve better security. Focusing on security in the beginning means that you should focus on the low-hanging fruits, the quick wins, and looking at the whole tech stack means that the whole tech stack is by far more than 90%, really more than 90% in the most cases, just management of dependency. It means you need very efficient dependency management, and on the other side you need something that can handle all these dependencies, direct dependencies and transitive dependencies, indirect dependencies. And for this we have Artifactory because it knows all these package managers from Java, Maven, over Debian, over Helm charts, Docker, whatever. And then with Xray we can scan not only the binaries itself, but we can check the dependencies, the indirect dependencies, and we can scan for compliance issues as well. So we have the knowledge about known vulnerabilities and compliance issues. And this, with focusing on the dependencies, means you have more than 90% of your system clean against known vulnerabilities. So if you want to try it out, we have this free tier. And there you can do two things. You can implement it with a CI environment, so there's a working horse, and you must automate everything so that the quality is always the same and the security behavior is always the same, whatever time you're choosing. And on the other side, you can shift left as much as possible. And with our IDE plugin, we are straight inside the IDE where you are writing the first line of code, and you need there all this information as well. So far, what can you do as next? Different things. First of all, you can attend a few of our webinars to get more detailed information about distribution, about Artifactory, about security, and so on and so on. If you want to have hands-on experience, just register for one of our workshops. We have regular workshops. I can give them in German as well as in English. And if you just want to consume something on YouTube, check out my YouTube channel. I have a bunch of these outdoor IT related YouTube videos. So then, thank you very much for attending. It was really a pleasure to see you at this conference, and enjoy the rest of the conference, enjoy all the other talks. And well, I would really appreciate to see you in one of my webinars, workshops, or as subscriber on my YouTube channel. Otherwise, what I'm doing right now, I will stay a little bit in the forest, we'll cook a coffee, we'll eat something, walk a little bit around, going home later. And for you, enjoy the rest of the conference, stay safe, and see you.